We're joined now by Eric Larson, CEO of the Downtown Detroit Partnership. Eric, thanks for joining us.
I would not want to be anywhere else, Nolan. Thank you.
Me either. So Eric, you've watched downtown a long time and have been part of its comeback for many years. Going into the pandemic, the prevailing notion was if you wanted to attract young, creative workers, you had to have an office downtown, and you saw all sorts of companies opening offices downtown to attract talent. That's sort of upended by the pandemic. Now, if you want to attract those same workers, the key is flexibility. They want to be able to work from where they want to work, when they want to work. How has that impacted the downtown workforce?
Yeah, I mean, Noel, it's a great point, and thank you for covering not only this conference but also this conversation, because for the Downtown Detroit Partnership, we've been at this for a long time, and we went from some incredible momentum pre-pandemic to some real low points. I mean, we had less than 16% of the work population. Well, for a while we had none of the work population. But when people were able to return, we had less than 16% of the work population coming back into the office. We're now on a good day, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're at about 45 to 60% of what used to be the high water mark. The high water mark was 80,000 people in the core of the downtown on a daily basis, 5 days a week. So we're probably at about 25, on average, 25,000 if you spread that throughout the week. So we're at somewhere around 30 to 40% of what we were at. And my guess, we were talking about this before, my guess is we'll probably even out someplace around 70% of that work population coming back. There's a portion of the work population that has to be in the office. They just can't do their job without being physical. But there's a big portion that's going to want that flexibility, and employers are trying to figure out how to provide that flexibility.
Are you seeing most employers going to a hybrid model?
Yeah.
Some days at home, some days in the office, and what's sort of the optimum that you're seeing? What are they settling at?
Absolutely. I haven't seen an employer yet that is mandated 5 days a week. Okay. Everybody is saying typically it's 2 days a week. They're often splitting their work population, partly to help relieve the pressure in the office, but also to try and spread the benefit of having people in the downtown between 2 days. So some of them will be Tuesday, Thursday, some of them will be sort of Wednesday, Fridays. But for the most part, it's concentrated in the center of that work week. And I think that what we'll see, Nolan, is we'll see most companies continue that flexibility. We went from, during the pandemic, and you reported a little bit about this, employers really had no leverage. Right. There was no political, much less sort of appropriate way to force people back in. As we get further away from the pandemic, as people get more comfortable with their health and everything else, we'll see people get back to some level of normalcy, but it will never be the same.
So let's talk about the impact on the real estate market. Yeah. We built a lot of office space prior to the pandemic in anticipation of an ever-growing downtown workforce. What's happening to that space now? Are businesses looking for smaller footprints?
Well, like anything, in any situation, in any part of our economy, there's a flight to quality. So office is no different. So when there is a downturn, whether it's a downturn caused by a pandemic or a downturn because of the economy, typically tenants will move from B and C class properties to A class properties. So you'll see some movement. You just saw the announcement from the Detroit Regional Chamber. Yeah. They're moving from 1001 over to 1 Kennedy Square, not because necessarily it's a A or a B to a B or a C, but because they are downsizing. And so you'll see that. Deloitte moved out of the Renaissance Center into WeWork space that was not being utilized the way WeWork expected it to be utilized. And they've made that actually a global platform solution for around the country. So I think we'll see offices scale back, but we won't see the immediate effect of that because leases have term.
Right.
That will take place over the next 3 to 5 years. We'll start to feel the effects of people being able to downsize and reconfigure their space. And then we'll also work on things like this federal legislation that we've got going through with Debbie Stabenow that's sponsored, to take office buildings that are 25 years or older and provide some obsolete tax credits to help them get repurposed as residential or incubator spaces or educational, but some other use.
So when you look at this excess office space, we're going to have. What do you see it becoming? Commercial space, housing, what do you?
Most of it, and we've seen this because we had a lot of old space that, that's where the tax credits were, that already has been converted into residential. A lot of it will be residential. The residential demand, Nolan, outstrips our supply by a lot. I mean, we are virtually 100% leased in the downtown. Our population over the last decade in the downtown has grown by 40%. We need more residential to attract. The millennial aged resident in downtown has more than doubled in the last decade.
So they still find downtown attractive place to live, even if they might not be going into an office every day.
Absolutely. They love to they love the amenity, they love the restaurants, they love the outdoor lifestyle that's provided by the Detroit riverfront and the amazing work that they've done, our 7 parks. All of that is stuff that attracts people that want to live. Now, there's a point at which those grow up, they get married, they have kids, and then we got to solve the other issues. But there is a huge demand for residential. Now, when I say huge, we're delivering 1,000 units, roughly a year. That's a reasonable amount of units, but we're not going to saturate our demand anytime soon at that pace.
What's happened to the restaurants and the businesses that depend on a vigorous downtown workforce?
They were decimated. I mean, again, you've reported a little bit, we've talked about it, small businesses in general, not just restaurants and bars, but small businesses in general. And I don't think we really truly know, and I'm not sure that we'll ever really know the real number of those businesses that actually have now failed because of the lack of business. But a number of businesses closed. Some of those closed, and then have reopened. But a lot of the restaurants are having a hard time getting their workforce back, no different than the hotels and the hospitality industry. And so while they're back to pre-pandemic levels of revenue, they aren't necessarily back to the same level of occupancy. Again, the flight to quality happens. So the really good restaurants are fully booked. It's hard to get a reservation. But there are a lot of them that are still struggling.
And I've noticed, you look out the window onto the street and where before the pandemic you're starting to see crowds up and down the street like a big city. A lot of days it feels like 1999 where you can walk from one end of Lafayette or 4th Street and hardly pass anybody else.
Yeah, I feel the same thing. I'm actually one of those that's in the office every day of the week, and so I feel it on the good days and on those days that
sometimes
it's a bit
hard
more
to find
quiet.
a place to eat lunch.
It is. A lot of people, a lot of the restaurants have, because again, partly because of the labor situation and partly because of the demand, have closed for lunch. But I think, Nolan, that's where the opportunity lies. Not to suggest that it isn't a problem, but that is really where some of the opportunity lies. As we create a more 24/7 economy, as we increase our residential population, as we continue to work on some of these educational higher ed solutions through these centers of innovation, whether it's the Michigan Central or the Center for Innovation with U of M, those are things that are going to really be, I think, drivers for additional population in the downtown and our visitors. The amount of interest by these large events. We've got the draft in 2024, we've got the Final Four in 2027, we've got the Grand Prix returning to the streets this year. All of those are generating a lot more activity and traffic. Now, they need to be throughout the year. They can't be episodic, but that in itself, we have 37 million visitors a year in the downtown.
And we just ran a piece in the Detroit News about the growth in the hotel market here. A lot of small to mid-sized hotels popping up everywhere around town and in Corktown where your businesses are located. Is Detroit still considered a hot spot for conventions, for other gatherings of that sort?
Yeah, you and I have been around long enough to remember when we had 5 citywides, 5 conventions where they would take all the hotels. That is now totally changed. The level of interest is there, but the interesting thing is, we saw it in some of the recent publications now listing Detroit as one of the top 100 places or top 10 places to visit. People want to come. They want to see the architecture. They want to check out the food scene because it's a really unique food scene, and it's very walkable and inviting. And so we have over 700 new hotel rooms that are being delivered this year. We have a bunch of hotels that have been announced. We have the new funding from the state that's going to help with a convention hotel, so that'll support larger blocks of rooms, which is necessary for the big events and big conventions. So yeah, I feel really bullish about that.
Well, Eric, thanks a lot. We appreciate you joining us on One Detroit, and thanks for what you do for the city.
Well, I appreciate you, and thank you, my friend. It's always good to be with you.
Yeah, good to see you again.
Thank you.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.